Tim's okay. Tim's fine. If we get some time at the end of the evening, I'll show you a second film clip of Tim. He's as good as gold. He's 15 years old and he's just gorgeous, okay? I guess for me, I'm banging on about dyslexia because I can't believe that in our community, dyslexia is seen as a learning disability. It's recognised as a genuine disability. It's not recognised in any school system as a genuine disability. How can that disparity remain? We should be as mad as anything, and we should all be shouting from the rooftops about that. It's just wrong. The other thing that bemuses me completely is that we now have screening tests for learning difficulties at such early ages for children, as young as 4 and 5 years of age. Why aren't they mandatory in schools? Why do we actually wait for year 3 NAPLAN to say, look, sorry, reckon your kid's got a bit of a problem with their reading, and there's been no focused intervention to help kids who are dyslexic. And when we help that group of kids, we actually help quite a huge group next to them too, when we actually begin to teach them with a structured program, which is just brilliant. So we've got to keep working on it, We also know that anybody who's stalled with their reading and hasn't moved forward by year 2, the prognosis about them successfully finishing school is not good. So as educators and as parents, if the reading's not right, we've got to do something about it early. It's very important. Okay, tonight we're actually going to look at emotional resilience. What is it? What is emotional resilience? It's got to be something really important, because if you go home tonight and you Google it, you just get thousands of programs and you get thousands of speakers that come along and do really fancy, ritzy workshops in schools for $5,000 a day, and they just set the world on fire, and apparently they make kids resilient. And so I reckon there's money to be made if you want to be a resilience coach in schools and market yourself to school budgets. How effective are resiliency programs? Some of them I think are quite effective, but they take a long term. And I'll talk about the work that goes into those sorts of programs. How effective are motivational speakers in terms of resilience? Probably pretty questionable. What have I said to you? How resilient are you? You score yourself out of 10. Really resilient, 10 out of 10. Cry if somebody says your haircut's not so good. That'd be about a 0 or 1 out of 10, right? But think about your life. Think about what you've been through. How resilient are you? And I've got some questions, okay? Are you an optimistic person, or are you wired to be a little more pessimistic? Because I think optimism and resilience, they kind of go hand in hand. How robust, how resilient were your parents? Have you inherited some of that stuff? Or did you watch your parents not being very resilient and you've decided to do a backflip on it? So you've learnt from the way in which they didn't do it very well. What about your brothers and sisters? Are they more or less resilient than you? These are interesting questions because, you know, sometimes we can get overly focused on kids and think this is all about kids, but it's just all about human beings. And sometimes by focusing on ourselves, we understand how kids learn and how kids develop. Are you more resilient now than when you were a kid at primary school? And most people go, absolutely. So what does that tell us? What's the message there? Yeah, there's some capacity to learn, to change, to adapt. That's really important to know as a parent. It's really important to know as an educator. Are there certain events that you've been through that has damaged your resiliency? Or are there certain events that you know that you can think about and you go, oh no, I've learnt from that. That's made me wildly more resilient. If I can deal with that in the past, I can deal with anything in the future. Are you able to bounce back better from some situations than others? I've got a great question for you, because you're an older audience. I mean, like beautifully mature. I don't mean like aged. Sorry. But I've got a great question for you. And the question is, who's managed over the years to sort of cut loose some of their acquaintances and friends that bring them down? Yeah. And I get lots of nods usually when I do this. Yes, because you know, to look after yourself and be resilient, you need to surround yourself with resilient people in your family and your friends. And it is such a prized quality that we can't afford to have people that draw our energy and draw on our batteries. So we become quite strategic as we get older. There's a great lesson there in terms of working with kids too. So as you do a little bit of this soul searching of your own, you start to appreciate resilience. Resiliency is a very fickle quality, but it is a quality that can certainly be nurtured. Is there a recipe to build resilience? Well, I want to hint at it. I think there could be, okay? Is there a recipe? Well, I look at resilience building the same way that you'd build a complicated layered cake. Now, for me, when I look at the icing on the top, that's what I call resiliency. But tonight, what I want to talk about is all of the hard underpinning work that sits underneath that icing. And that's the stuff that I want to focus on tonight. Yes, we talk about resiliency. Yes, we get great coaches into schools and we pay them mega bucks to make kids resilient. But it ain't the icing. It's actually the hard work done by important people in children's lives. And tonight, the important people I'm addressing are parents. Our role as parents is to enable kids, to support kids to be able to do things. And what I want to run past you tonight are some options how you might enable your kids. I want to be friendly, but I might actually throw out some ideas tonight that you disagree with. Can we still be friends? Because that's my job, okay? I want to challenge some of your principles, some of your thoughts. Okay. I can summarise building resiliency with 10 C's or some competencies about building resilience. And this is what I want to focus on tonight, but I want to give you a quick snapshot. You ready? Okay, I want to have a look at competence. How do we build competence into kids? Because if you build competence into kids, that's an aspect of resiliency. Well, many of you would work with your kids and you try and develop a can-do attitude in your kids. In other words, they can make decisions and they can handle situations and they are given the opportunity to handle situations, even though the little devils don't actually make those decisions as well as we do. But it's really important that they feel empowered and they actually have a go. So, number one, we coach them to grow a sense of competency, that I can do stuff, that I have got a voice, that I can have a say in how things might work out. And what about confidence? One of the things that we've learnt over the years is that when kids feel secure and attached, and when we radiate loving and accepting messages, they actually get a sense of security that lasts a lifetime. They've got a touchstone, they've got a family, they've got a sense, a place they can always come back to. And that's really important to develop. Each of your kids have really unique qualities. Just pick one for a minute, okay? You got one? No, come on, focus. Okay. See if it ticks any of these boxes. We're trying to describe their personality, we're trying to describe their qualities or their virtues, okay? Fairness, gentleness, reliability, persistence, determination, lovingness, loyalty, honesty, kindness, and I could go on and on and on. Our kids, whether they're 17 or 7 or younger, are still developing a self-image. And that self-image is vulnerable and young and developing, and they need to hear from the people who love them most how we see them. So if you ticked any of those boxes for that child that you had in mind, or you've got some other adjectives that you're thinking about, in conversations with them, they're the words I'd love you to use with them. So they develop a sense that that's how my mum sees me. That's how my dad sees me. These are the virtues that I've got. Now, that's pretty easy when your kids are in the right space, isn't it? It's when your kids aren't in the right space and their emotion and their behaviour is not running the way we would want it. I think that's when the part of the equation gets a little bit harder. And what do we know about personality? It doesn't change much. What do we know about behaviour? Yeah, we can make modifications to behaviour over time. But we need to accept kids for the personality that they've got, even if we think it's a little bit tricky. And then there's connection. Learning and being close to mum and dad is really important for a child's emotional and intellectual and social development, because we model so much that they pick up on. But you know, just as important, probably more important in some ways, is your child's connection with other kids, peers, not older kids, not younger kids, not with adults, but with peers. Now, some of you will be sitting here thinking, well, that's okay, because my child is really well connected with his or her peers. That works well. We know the basis for good mental and emotional health in the future is when kids are well connected with peers. We also know through copious amounts of research that when kids are not well connected with peers, we do have a worry about their emotional health in the future. So as a parent, you do whatever you can to connect kids with peers. And we'll talk more about that as we go on. Change. Every one of us uses negative scripts with our kids. Some of them are subtle, some of them are really obvious. But when we use a negative script with our kids, it's damaging and it's harmful, and it's language that promotes a negative thought within ourselves and within our children. Let me give you an example. You ready? I'll give you really obvious ones to start with. Oh, don't be so stupid, Mark. How many times do I have to tell you? What's wrong with you? Don't you ever learn? I've got a less obvious example. How was school today? Was school okay today? Was anybody mean to you? Did you have anyone to play with? Did everything go well? Were you by yourself at lunchtime again? What did you do at lunchtime? Who did you play with at lunchtime? It doesn't take long before a child figures you have no vote of confidence in their capacities to relate to their peers. So what do? You find other ways to figure out how they're working at lunchtime. You talk to clever teachers. You talk to clever principals. You find another way into it. And you get people to look for you without doing that and without children thinking they can't do it. That's not a way to build a can-do. And I'd love $1 for every time I've had a child, you know, maybe 12, 13, 14 in my room with their mum or their dad crying, saying, Mark, can you just tell my mum and dad to stop asking me how school was every day? I will tell them if it's no good. So make yourself a promise. As of tonight, you'll never say, how was school today? Because it's a terrible, terrible question. And I've had a really big day today. I started work at 5 o'clock this morning because I always start early and I write early and I enjoy writing. Then I actually headed off down to my Ponga to do a workshop. And then I came back and I did some work at home and checked my emails, which, you know, you constantly do, don't you? Because if you leave them for too long, it's like you look at your inbox and it's like so scary. And some of you understand that. I get it. It's where I am with my life. And then I actually had 2 parties. I run What's the Buzz, which is a social skills group for kids often on the spectrum. So we had 2 parties tonight, 8 kids that were in year 2, and we had another 8 kids after that, and their kids are a little bit older, they were in year 4. And I've got you tonight, and if I go home tonight and my dear wife Sharon says to me, "How was your day?" I might scream. because it's the same thing, because school's big. You do, as a kid, you do lots and lots and lots of things at school every day. And when your mum or your dad goes to you, "So how was school today?" what bit do you pick out? So from now on, ask a really focused question. Your focused question could be, "How did that homework go that I did for you last night? Did I pass?" You know? Yeah, ask something really focused, really at the pointy end, rather than, "How was school today?" Sometimes we're so busy being good parents that we keep giving to our kids and giving and giving and doing for them, and they don't get a chance to contribute back to the family. They don't get a chance to contribute to the immediate community or even the wider community. I want to talk a little bit about that later on because I think it's very, very important. I want to also talk about coping. Coping with life. Life, as you know, is full of wrongs and it's full of injustices, and that's the way it is. Alert your children really early that life's wonderful. It's just fabulous. But it ain't always fair. It's just not fair. It's not always fair. And some of you will have kids that get really stuck on fairness, really stuck on justice and injustice, and that's their thing. That's life. Life is unjust. Life is unfair. So what can you do about that? How can you navigate your way through that? I want to have a look at that tonight too. Oh, this one. Control. Okay. Well, our world is filled with great kids. And some of them are prone to perfectionism. Some of them are prone to easy distress. Some of us are prone to anxiety or jealousy, or kids who just think way too much about the world. And when kids feel stressed, what do? They draw on power-styled tactics, or they hold what I often call a power card. No, I don't want to wear that. No, I don't want to go there. No, you can't make me do that. And suddenly you've got a teenage tantrum, or you've got a childhood tantrum, and there's a total meltdown. Why? Because there's a script that needs to be played out by that child. I can't face the thing, or I don't want to do the thing that I need to, or that you need me to do. So instead, I will throw a tantrum, I will pull in my control, and I know what's going to happen. We've done this dance before. I'll say no, you'll say yes, I'll say no in a bigger voice, you'll say yes in a bigger voice, you'll shout at me, I'll shout at you, we'll shout, I'll storm around the house, you'll storm around the house, I'll cry, you'll cry, and then we'll talk and we'll do about halfway. And we'll meet in the middle. Do what you can to be flexible. Do what you can to understand what's behind that behaviour. What is behind that behaviour? Is it anxiety? Is it worry? Is it fear? They're really important things to think more deeply instead of just confronting the behaviour at that moment, at that time. Communication. Oh, I want to talk about this one. But, you know, all I'll say at the moment is, gee, it'd be great if you never gave your kids any suggestions. It'd be great if you never fixed their problems for them. It'd be just great if you were a fantastic listener and you often gave back reflective questions. And you gave back those reflective questions as a 20-year plan to help them develop reflective thinking themselves as kids and young teenagers into adulthood. Competition, I want to talk about that. I think it's fantastic that everybody in the netball team and everybody in the basketball team actually get a trophy at the end of the season and everyone's really good. But I also think that we need to have winners and losers. We need to contrive it sensitively, really constructively, but we need to celebrate people who have talent. We need to celebrate people who have just been plain lucky, because that happens. And we need that experience, don't we, of losing and being gracious while we're not feeling very good about things. We need that practice, so more on that later. And good old common sense. We need bucket loads of that being apparent. And one of the things that I want to talk about is what happens when children get upset. I love kids being upset. I mean that in a nice way, all right? Don't you hate me. I mean in a good way, okay? Because being upset is a great teacher. And if we're clever enough as parents or adults to know that we can teach them ways to go from upset, we don't problem solve when they're upset. Oh no, we don't fix problems. You know, think of it when you're with your partner and you're upset and they want to fix it for you. I don't think so. well, why would your kid be any different? So we actually invent creative ways to get kids back to that calmer state. Then you problem solve. That's resiliency building. I want to talk about that. Do your kids act like you? Well, if your kids were here at the moment and they were all looking at you, and I spoke to the kids and I said, what are you learning about your mum or dad right now, looking at them? And they go, nothing, Mark. I do all, because when they're out publicly, they're always on their good behaviour. They do a certain smile. They do, they do a certain talk. They do a certain walk, because that's their public behaviour, and I learned nothing from them publicly except how to behave publicly. But I only needed one lesson in that. That was not a deep lesson in learning. I learned from my mum and dad at home. I learned from my mum and dad behind closed doors. I watch what happens when my mum and dad disagree. I watch how my mum and dad disagree. I watch whether it turns into World War III and there are huge fireworks and mum or dad storms through the house yelling at each other, and then they don't talk to each other for the rest of the night, and only one of them puts me to bed. Or other kids will tell you, I watch my mum and dad fight or disagree, and I watch them sit down at the table, and I watch them talk it through, and I watch them cry, but I watch them always fixing it, and I watch them going to bed happy together, and they still kiss me goodnight. So our children actually learn from our scent. They actually learn by the very things that we wish they wouldn't look at. That's where the learning comes from. So our modelling from our kids is hugely important, but it's actually not what we tell them to do. It's actually what we're doing that they pick up on so beautifully. What about a positive attitude? Do you have a positive attitude? Because if you do, gee, it rubs off on your kids. Your kids are really lucky. I love this. The longer I live, the more I realise the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It's more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It's more important than appearance, giftedness or skill. It'll make or break a person, a business, a family. The remarkable thing is we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. I love it. So attitude is so portable. And even if you've had a bad attitude for 10 years, you can actually change for tomorrow. We cannot change the past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we do is play on the one string that we have, and that is attitude. I'm convinced that life's 10% about what happens to me and 90% about how I react to it. And so it is with you. You are in charge of your attitudes. I love that. It's just beautiful. Quite often, and I want to have a look at some tools that we might use at home. Positive sayings that we can build in. There's a couple that I really like. Wherever you go, no matter what the weather, always bring your own sunshine. I like that. Every day may not be good, but there's something good in every day. I actually really like that one too. And happiness is an attitude. We either choose to make ourselves miserable or happy. The amount of work is exactly the same. Attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference. Where can you get those sayings from? Just Google them. Just put in positive sayings and you'll just get website after website after website with fantastic sayings that you can print out. You might enlarge, you might laminate them, and once every week you might throw one on your dinner table. And you don't have to make a big deal about it, but it's just a really regular thing that there's a new one the kids know every week. You put it on your dinner table and you just talk about how might you do it? Has anybody done that today? And they're just simple things, particularly if you're not an optimistic person. It actually gives you a framework to work within, and I think that's good. We often get really focused on teaching our kids games like chess. And there's an intellectual snobbery sometimes around how well people play chess. You know, I not only see the first move, but I can see the second, third and fourth move. And if you make any subsequent moves, I've got you anyway because I know how to play chess. But you know, we're talking about real life chess here, aren't we? We're talking about that with every move we make, there is a natural consequence. Sometimes to build resiliency in kids, we actually need to play what if. We actually need to alert them to the fact that every time they do something, there's likely to be a behaviour or a reaction that actually follows. We need to skill some of our kids in this because they don't see it naturally. And you know where I'm leading with tonight, don't you? I'm talking to you about being your child's best resilience coach. And coaches coach in the good moments, never in the bad moments. Coaches don't bang on and on and on until the kids glaze over and they feel like falling asleep. Good coaches find their moment and they plant little seeds. Okay. Some of you will have kids who get anxious. Some of you will have kids who unravel really easily. They won't be like you because you're just fantastic because you just sit, you just cool, calm and relax. I'm loving that. The kids that when you go to the extended family gathering, it's your kids that unravel. It's your child that has the cry or breaks down. It's your kid that the family looks at and the family talks behind your back. If only she was a better mother. If only he actually played some role in fathering this kid. And what do we do with those kids? Well, we work on rehearsal. We work on actually saying to our child, whether they're 5 years old or even if they're 13 years old, you know, when you go over to Nana's and we're all there and her house is filled with people and noise and movement, after about an hour or so, you start to really unravel. And you usually end up in tears and you usually have a fight with someone. What about if we plan it? What about if we do this differently? What about if we take your DS? Or what about if we take a DVD for you? And what about if we work out a plan that when you get there for the first 45 minutes, you can have a play? And then I'll give you a secret cue. And we'll go to Nana's room. And in Nana's room, you can play your DS. And I'll get Mark to come in with you too, because you get along really well with your older cousin, Mark. And he can play on his DS as well, and you can talk. And then after about half an hour, I'll give you a call because that's when we get dinner, and that's normally when you're losing the plot. And you can come and have dinner. And I'll also have a secret signal. We'll work with you that when you actually start to unravel, I'll give you the secret signal, which means get back into Nana's room and get on your DS or do something, and I'll bring food in. And we can just show off to the rest of the family how well you can do this. You know, take a leaf out of really good educators' books. What do they do with kids, for example, who are on the spectrum and they're heading off to a school camp? Well, months even, weeks before, they'll show them photographs of the camp. They'll give them a timetable, a minute-by-minute timetable of what the program looks like. Clever parents might even be able to take their kids for a drive there and have a walk through so that they're completely intellectualised how things are going to work. That's a good tip, because in front of those family members then, or in any situation, your child suddenly has improved resiliency. They've pulled it together. Do you teach your kids about the delete key? That when somebody is annoying them, they can just hit the delete key. And as soon as they hit the delete key in their mind, the person just shrinks and shrinks and is in little baby nappies, and the nappy drops down around their legs and they've got poo in their nappy, and you just walk away. Have you actually taught them, and kids, by the time kids get to about 8 years of age, have you taught them think one thing but say another? Parents often go, oh, I haven't ever done that with my child. But we do that, don't we? You know, like we're at work and we've got a boss and we don't particularly like our boss, and the boss, you know, is asking us to do something. We go, yeah, okay. It's all right. But you know what you're thinking, don't you? Absolutely. It's rude words and I'm not saying them tonight. Absolutely. It's a real circuit breaker. And we've learnt to do that over the years. You'll walk away, you'll pull a face, you might even mutter out loud, but it's a circuit breaker. You feel a whole lot better. We need to teach kids little tips like that really, really help them. And teach kids how to say sorry. Sorry. Not like that. That sorry doesn't work. Teach kids how to say sorry so it feels genuine. Why? We've also got to say to kids, when you say sorry to somebody, it doesn't mean it's your fault. It actually is a way to repair a relationship and to find a way forward. Kids actually need to practice how to say sorry. How many different ways can you say sorry? How many different words can you use to be sorry and say sorry? How might you touch somebody in order to say sorry? So lots of different ways to convey sorry and repair relationship. Have a catastrophe scale. Put it on the fridge. This one's from What's the Buzz, but there's millions of them around the world for all sorts of reasons, and this is a worry catastrophe scale. Number 1, you can see it's just a little glitch. Just a little weeny hiccup. Number 2, bit of an upset, a bit more serious. I got a bit wobbly, but I can deal with it myself. Number 3 is a bit of a trouble. I probably will need to talk to mum or dad or my teacher or some adult that I trust, okay, because I might not be able to deal with this one all alone. Number 4 is a crisis, and number 5 is a disaster or a tragedy. Why do we need to teach our kids these things? Because in my working with kids over the years in social skills groups, we even get kids after we introduce this to them when we don't have lucky dips, and the next minute one of the kids in the group will call out, oh well Mark, it's only a number 1. And already they're compartmentalising, already they're making a choice. I really wanted a lucky dip, I was hoping it was lucky dip day. We're not getting lucky dips today, but it's only a number 1. And look, what about when you get in the car and your child's in the back seat, you're driving them home being a really good mum or a really good dad, and your child's going on and on about Lucy at school, and then Lucy said such and such, and I could not believe it. At the moment, I'm just fed up with Lucy. Isn't it good to be able to go, oh, look, where is this on the catastrophe scale? Do I need to be really worried? Is this a 5 Or is this a 1? No, Mum, this is just a 1. I need to be talking about it though. It's good. At least you suddenly understand the degree of difficulty that you're really dealing with. The other thing with catastrophe scales is that kids learn really quickly that when something happens, it feels much bigger, and after an hour or a day, it always kicks back a few notches. It's a great way to learn. So catastrophe scales are fantastic to play with and having them on the fridge. Focus tonight is emotional resilience, and I can't not do this slide if we're talking about emotional resilience. We know that the most resilient kids are kids with good mental health. We also know from copious studies that good resilience or good emotional health comes from kids who live in emotionally steady families, where the emotional tone is a really decent tone that just moves along very steadily. We know that kids who live in families that have a roller coaster of emotional overtones actually don't do as well emotionally as they grow up. So for us, it's really important to try and get on the same page as parents. So both parents, if you live with your partner, but many of my clients tell me that it's much better living alone without a partner because you don't have to deal with their parenting style. But those of you who live with a partner, getting on the same page is very important. But there's a difficulty. You see, women, in my view, and in my new book that I've just written with a dear colleague of mine, I talk about women parenting as dogs. Now, I mean this in a nice way, beautiful dogs, pedigree type dogs, beautifully clipped nails, painted, great, gorgeous dogs you'd die for, okay? But let me explain. They parent like sheepdogs or cattle dogs. Right, time to get out of bed. We've got to get going to school. Hurry up, come on. You get the idea. We're nipping at the ankles here, okay? It's time to get out of bed. Let's get moving. Good boy. Oh, put your feet up. Yep, okay, I can pop your socks on. That's great. Come on, up you come. Give me your hands. I'll get the quilt out your way. Right, go and do a wee. Oh, here you go. I've got your jammies. Yep, step into your undies. Oh, no, that's good. You're good. Yep, okay, have a wee. Oh, you've got drops of wee. Oh, I can fix that up afterwards. Don't worry. That's okay. Good, put your hands up. I'll put your shirt on, and you've got this roll. It is, isn't it? She's cracking. Yeah, it's true. And what you're doing is you're nipping at the heels of the kids all the time to get them to that destination so that when you get to kiss and drop or you walk into school in the morning, you just look such a competent mother, but you've only really made it by the skin of your teeth, haven't you? You know, it's touch and go, but you're there. But you can see the point that I'm making. It's actually nipping at the heels, just steering them in the right direction. And I must say, if that's what you do, keep doing it. It's not a criticism. If it works, it's great. And I think it's okay. Dads, well, I've got an animal analogy for dads, if you like. We're more like grizzly bears. Get your shoes on. We've got to get going. Can you get your shoes on? Now. I need Velcros. Mate, shoes on now, need to be in the car, will be a consequence if you can't get them on right now. Hurry up. Oh, for heaven's sake, you're grounded for 10 years. It's a dad style. Can you both parent on the same page? Absolutely. Can parents parent differently? Absolutely. What's the worst thing parents can do? It's written up on the screen. Particularly when one parent, for some bizarre reason, actually thinks they parent better. Because the parameters for really good parenting are huge. Really healthy parenting, they're huge. If we're going to get on the same page, the page is really big. We're not talking about a little post-it note that you've got to both stand on, but we're talking about talking to one another, trusting in one another. And us blokes, we're doing catch up. Just a few generations ago, we didn't spend time with the kids. I don't know what we did. I think we worked all the time, but we still do, but we still love the kids. And we want to spend time with them. I don't know too many blokes these days that actually don't breastfeed. That was an exaggeration. I don't know too many blokes these days, in all seriousness, that don't do pretty much everything. And the other thing, you notice the other term that's really dropped out of bloke talk is I've got to babysit the kids. You know, I haven't heard that for a long time. You don't babysit the kids. They're actually my kids. They're actually my responsibility. That's a style of language that is dropping away, and I love it. So us blokes are catching up. So when the next time you hear your partner actually say something like, "You're grounded for 10 years," let him go with it. It's okay. And when you get into bed later that night, just go, "So, how's the grounding for 10 years going to work? Like, what's the plan to make this actually work?" Okay? And I think that's the way to go. It's okay. And then suddenly they begin to learn that they overreact. The child also needs to learn really quickly that mum does it her way, dad does it his way. Both ways are okay, but they're a bit different. I hinted at this before. I hinted at control. Resilient kids need for kids to develop good emotional health, to be resilient, they need a family that has a good emotional tone that's steady. I'm not saying you've got to turn into a robot or you've got to become a zombie and you've got to have one level of emotion, because you and I both know that ain't ever going to happen. You're still going to lose it sometimes. But mostly we try and keep a level emotional tone. That's our goal. And when our kids lose it, when our kids go for control, when our kids throw a hissy fit or a tantrum, I've got some really great tips for you in order to be more flexible and to go under the behaviour and towards the emotion. So firstly, all of our kids are reliant on us being composed. If we're going to act like a fruitcake, your child's probably going to act like a nut job too. It's a simple reality, isn't it? And you know, like, you've just got to sit there and you've got to think, it's really true. And in fact, sometimes we demand absolute instant reform from our kids, don't we? We do things to our children that we would never, ever do to anybody else's child, or we would never, ever do to anybody else. You know, we'll get up close. Excuse me. All right. Yeah, it won't hurt you. But we get up close. We actually even get in their space. And we would never do that to most other people. We finger wave in front of them and we stand over them expecting them to change their behaviour immediately. And the only thing that she feels like doing to me at the moment is this. You know, and we see this quite often when I talk with clients, and they're very honest, and many of my clients are very honest, and they'll just say, "But Mark, he or she brings out the worst in me. I can't help it in that moment." And we've got to be really careful about our self-control. So we've always got to look at behaviour happens for a reason, what's driving it. We've always got to have a plan B that we can resort to rather than actually getting louder than our child and actually demanding things from them. A simple question that you can ask your child and then walk away. Let me know what I can do to help. Just let me know what I can do to help. And when kids get in that groove, they understand there's some breathing space. There is a way out. There is a way that I can actually work with mum or work with dad. But they might not be able to tell you within the next 3 minutes, okay? This is my active listener. Active listening is a great tool. It's a tool that we need to cultivate. problem is we love our kids to bits. We really do, don't we? We so love our kids to bits. And as soon as they've got a difficulty, as soon as they've had a setback or a problem, and they come home and they start talking to us about it, all we want to do is fix it for them and just take them out of their pain. But in fact, being in that pain, being in that discomfort for a while is probably a really, really healthy thing. It's probably a good thing. And what's a good way to go? Use a script similar to this. Are you ready? So what did he say to you? Oh, wow. How did you feel? I would have felt the same. What did you say back then? Oh, how do you think he felt when you said that? Do you think that made things better or worse? Oh, I agree. I can see why you said that. So what do you think he should do to make this better? What do you think you could do to make this better? How could you fix this? Oh, that's a really good idea. Do you need me to help you do that? What can I do to help you? Be careful not to take on too much responsibility. Walk alongside your child rather than dragging them along with you in front. That's a script that we need to embed in our kids over years, so they have that script to problem solve themselves. It's nice, reflective thinking, and it's such a steadying approach when kids actually have to wrestle with mixed up feelings. Oh, winners and losers. Yeah, so just briefly, hey, through losing, what do our kids learn? Well, none of us are fabulous at all things all of the time, but you know what? We're not actually expected to be, and it's okay. When we lose because at that time we were not as lucky as the other person, or we were not as skilled as the other person, and that's the way life goes. And when we lose, we can truly appreciate a winner's luck or their talent. And when we lose, the effort that we've put in, the training that we've put in, the commitment that we've put in can never be taken away from us. That is all powerful. That's even more important than the winning and losing, the commitment. When we lose, we learn how to regroup our emotions, bounce back, strive again, even though it might take hours or days. Actually, when we finally win, we feel how good it feels to win without getting a hollow victory. And as I mentioned earlier on, we learn to control feelings as we need to be gracious losers. So I think there is great scope to view winning and losing very rationally, and that we should contrive situations at home and in lots of other situations for kids to experience some winning and some losing. Okay, I mentioned before I like kids being upset. I'm not a mean man, but I do like kids experiencing being upset because it's a natural part of life. And we've all experienced being upset because it is the natural part of life. And there is this lovely continuum from being tragically upset at this end over something and really grieving, to being joyfully happy at this end and thoroughly enjoying something. And we don't see too many parents going, hey, come on, settle down, don't be so happy. But we do fluff around very quickly and probably too readily over kids who are upset. So what do? Because we want kids to experience how to move along this continuum. That's really, as parents, that's what we want to build into our kids' thinking. How do I move from that place to at least a neutral place, like where you are tonight, just sitting, contemplating. You're not particularly happy, you're not particularly sad or upset, you're just contemplative. How do we get them to that zone? Well, for some of you who have kids that are very attached to you and are very sensitive and you've put a lot of work in to make sure that you've fixed their problems in the past, you might have to start off in a different way. And it might be that when they're very upset over something, that you actually just might sit on the couch, read a magazine. You might even listen to some music, because earpieces actually say a lot, don't they? They kind of say, I'm not available. Just in a quiet way, not in an arrogant or rude way. I'm just not available. But you're there with their head on your lap, and they can begin to console themselves. You might look at a magazine and they calm down over 15 or 20 minutes. Then you might get up for a drink. Then they might go for a play. And then after they've had a play or they've done something, they'll be back in that zone again. And then you can problem solve. For some of you whose kids aren't so overly sensitive and not so closely attached, that when they're upset, you can just say, hey, this is not urgent. I know you're really, really upset. Why don't you go and watch your favourite DVD? Why don't you go and play on the computer? We'll talk about it later, okay? We don't have to do it straight away. Let them find ways where they can actually move along that continuum, because we don't problem solve, as I said earlier on, when they're feeling really upset. None of us make good decisions when we're in that state. We've got to consciously support our kids and teach them how to move along that continuum independently, bit by bit by bit. Do any of you have kids that worry? Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's always one in the audience, but there's usually a lot more. Some worries are absolutely real for kids. There's no doubt about that. And these worries need to be listened to, okay? And most of us as parents have a bit of a barometer. We know when it's a worry that we should really be dealing with. We know when it's a worry that's at bedtime, and I really don't want to go to sleep just yet, and I'd really like you to hang around a whole lot longer, and I'd really like to have a bit of a chat with you for a while. We've got that on our barometer, and we know the difference. And we know the kids that hop into the car after school and they go, all about the school day, all about that rotten teacher, who's actually a very good teacher. You know, and she has or he has your complete trust, because that's an emotional discharge. And some of you would be like that when you get home from work. You've just got to talk about work for a little while. I just need 15 minutes, 20 minutes just to talk about work. Then I can live a normal life with my family. You know, it's just that you've got to get it out, don't you? And some people don't. Some people actually just internalise it and it's okay. So we are different. Certainly I work with my clients that we don't talk about worries at night time. We only talk about worries in the daytime. Why? Because at night time your batteries are low and everything looks a lot worse than it is in the dark. It looks really scary in the dark. And we never ever talk about them at night time, because that brings up the idea that you might be spending ages talking about worries in bed at night before you fall asleep. What a terrible place to talk about worries. Your bedroom should be a place for sleep. It shouldn't have 16 screens. It should just be a beautiful place for sleep, a place that you can go into and think happy thoughts and just drift off to sleep. You talk about your worries somewhere else. It's really important. And if your child gets to bed and goes, oh yeah, but there is something that's bothering me, it's okay. Let's draw it on this piece of paper. So next to their bed, have a pile of post-it notes, have a tin with a slot in the top and with a padlock on the side so the worries can't escape. And what you can do is get them to draw their worry, or you draw their worry, or you write their worry, fold it up, pop it in the tin. We'll deal with that in the morning. That's safe there. Or get a Guatemalan worry doll. Give the worry doll the worry. The worry doll will look after it for the night and we'll deal with it in the morning. I had a young man that I still see, Hamish. He's actually studying veterinary science and he's in his 4th year at this stage. But I first met Hamish when he was in year 5, so he would have been about 10. And he was a worrier. And he used to worry about all sorts of things. Will my knees grow too knobbly? Will I get too tall? He did get too tall, actually. He's huge. He used to have lots of worries all the time. And we set up a worry tin for him. And he used it religiously. And after about 6 months, I said, Hamish, do you reckon, would you mind bringing in your worry tin? We'll have a look at it together and we'll sort the worries out into really big, serious worries, kind of medium, those trouble type worries, and little hiccups. Oh, that's good. So I brought them in and we sorted them all out, and you can imagine what the piles look like. The hiccupy worries, huge pile. Medium worries, little pile. Actually, just one in the big pile. Will my mum or dad die? Because that's a worry for a lot of kids, especially as they develop, isn't it, around 9 or 10 years of age. For some kids it can be a bit younger, because they begin to understand that there's a finiteness about life. Anyway, he looked at all of his worries and, quote, this is what he said to me. Mark, my worries are crap. And you think they kind of were, but he learnt from that experience that we do overly worry about a lot of things that we can't control. And we've learnt this ourselves, haven't we, in our journey? What an interesting little snapshot you can do with your own kids to increase their resiliency about worrying. I run What's the Buzz, which is a social skills program. There are lots and lots of social skills programs about the place. I would always say to you, of course, because I wrote What's the Buzz with Madhavi, that it is the best social skills program in the whole world. But the truth is it's not. It's a good social skills program. It's fun to use. Good social skills programs actually teach kids how to connect. They actually teach kids the rules about friendship. They teach kids what's expected in friendship. It's social and emotional literacy. And really, that's the foundation for academic literacy. Because if you haven't got your social and emotional literacy right, your academic approach is pretty tricky. But for some of you, you won't look at a program for social and emotional literacy. For many of the boys on the spectrum that I actually work with, 10-pin bowling clubs living in Adelaide are fantastic places to join because they have organised clubs that you can tap into. And the mums will tell me that I work with them and their boys, they'll say, he just talks all week about Thursday nights and going to bowling. He can't wait to get there. And they get there early and sit down together, and there's 5 of them that always meet, and they're in the same team, and they'll have a meal together, and they're all on the spectrum, and they'll have their French fries and their chicken nuggets because it's white food, and that's what you do if you're on the spectrum. Ideally on a white plate's even better. And you get your Coke, and you shake your Coke like mad because you've got sensory issues. You don't want to be swallowing those damn bubbles. And you get those out of the way, and then you get your favourite shoes, size 6, little mark at the front, little mark at the back on that one. You go up to the counter and you ask for those particular shoes, but they're already out, so you have a total meltdown because you can't have the same shoes that you always have. And then mums and dads will say, and then they bowl for the next hour. They don't seem to talk to each other, and they get in the car. And on the way home, they know each other's business and they have just so connected. That's within your power as a parent. And that is hugely powerful to developing good self-image and really good mental health beyond resiliency. Just about there too. Okay, that was good timing. Acts of kindness for others. I hinted at this earlier on, didn't I, this evening, about sometimes we get caught up in just doing for our kids, giving to our kids, because we love them to bits and we want to create a really nice life, but sometimes we actually forget that they need to give. Now, certainly set your child up to prepare their breakfast a whole lot more often. Kids, even young kids, can have a day or two a week where they just get their own brekkie. They could set the table the night before so that they've actually got the idea of what they're going to get. And kids by middle primary actually can get their brekkie most mornings. What about preparing a meal for the family? I mean, we were getting our kids, and I've got two girls, you know, there's Kim and Noni. They were getting our food when Kim would have been 3 and Noni would have been, Kim would have been 3 and, Noni would have been 3 and Kim was 5. We started really early. Our extended family said it was slave labour, but we never believed that. But early on, you can get kids and you can help them to open containers. You can get them to put food in bowls. You can get them to cart food over to the table. You can actually get them to offer the food to people. And as kids get older, they can do it with a whole lot more style and they can begin to cook. But work on a night, whether it's a week, whether it's a fortnight, whether it's a month, where the kids give back, that they're expected to do those things. And then this next one is a bit of a shock to some parents. How long is it since your child has done something thoughtful for somebody else? And a lot of parents actually look at this and they'll say to me afterwards, actually, that was very sobering. My child hasn't done anything like that for anybody in my living memory. And it's a great thing to seize on. It's a great thing to help kids give back. So, that brings me to a close. What's the take-home message? You are what will make the greatest difference to your kids. You are their resilience coach. And I'd like you to see yourselves as a coach beyond being a parent. I think it's really important. Our kids, they're young, they're in absolute rehearsal, they're clumsy, they're gathering experience. You know they're going to make big mistakes. Of course they are. That's what they do. Some of your kids are going to make very big mistakes. That's okay too. That's part of the learning process. That's part of getting how life works. You know, I hope what you've got tonight is some really practical ideas. The stuff you can do. You don't need to see a beguiling therapist or anybody to teach your child to be more resilient. Sometimes there are aspects that you can hone and you may need professional intervention, but largely this can be done by parents. And I think it's really ironic that your child's eventual level of resilience hinges on how resilient we are with them for the first 20 years of their lives, how resilient we are as being a good coach and just chipping away. Thanks for tonight. That's good.